of all, how many questions? First of all, how many questions would be there on this section is really important. What is the time limit, right? And then what kind of passages? Again, because English is a test here also. First, we were testing you on your evidence-based reading. Here, we are actually helping you read to be able to revise and edit text, right? As in, when you're talking about SAT writing section, I am basically testing you on two skills. One, your ability to use standard English conventions, for which I would be testing you on your grammar concepts. I would be testing you on your punctuation concepts. That comes in part of revising and editing text. Another than this, very important concept would be, we also be testing you on your expression of ideas, right? That is a tricky category where most of the students get stuck. So we'll be talking about that in a while, but then let's first take an overview of the section. This section, writing and language test, would be your section 2 on the paper. What I need to remember is there would be 4 passages with 11 questions each. That means I would have 44 questions to deal with. Believe you me, this is a very, very scoring section, provided you know your strategy, you know how to identify a question type. We give you certain steps to follow. Take from me in writing, if you follow those steps, you follow your process of elimination, you would always get the correct answer. Students come and tell us that for me, when I start writing section, it seems that as if all the options are sounding equally good to me. So how am I supposed to identify the correct answer? Well, there are nuances, there are subtleties that you need to know. And then what is this session all about? When I talk about these passages, what you need to understand, next question that may be coming to your head is that what kind of passage? I mean, they would be very dry passages. What kind of topic areas I need to get comfortable with? Well, after our reading sessions that are so exhaustive, most of you would have become so comfortable with the reading. Again, the reading speed would be enhanced to a level where even if I am giving you just 35 minutes to read these 4 passages, our students, when we give them practice sessions, they spend not more than 5 to 6 minutes per passage. That is along with answering all the 11 questions. So they are able to attempt all these questions, let's say all 44 questions in half the time. I have seen students solving paper right in front of me, finishing test in 20 minutes, 22 minutes, 25 minutes, having good 10 minutes to themselves to review their attempts. So that is the ideal strategy. That means the first thing that I need to develop is reading speed. And the reading speed would not just help you in your reading section, it is going to benefit you in your writing section also. And that holds true for your math section. If you're quick at reading questions, if you are quick at analyzing the options, it will become easy for you, right, to answer the questions. So topic areas from where you can expect your passages. Passages could be history, social studies. Passages could be humanities, right? Passages could be from science. And then there are informative passages where we talk about certain careers also. There are certain careers that have become common, and then we want to educate you about that. Like I said, there would be 35 minutes for you to complete the section, and then word limit would be somewhere around 400 to 450 words. That means you would not have too lengthy passages here, unlike your reading section. Moving on, what could be the possible text types here? Now, when I talk about these passages, I have told you how many passages. There would be 4 passages. I have told you how many questions per passage, 11 questions. I have told you what subject areas they can come from. Next important question is, what is the style of writing that can be asked? Now, this in a way helps me analyze and understand the passage better, that there would be certain argumentative passage where they are probably giving me different perspective on a similar thing, right? Or there could be a narrative nonfiction passage where I am talking about very interesting concepts. Let's say I am talking about the probably the idea of, let's say, the architecture of castles, let's say. How did that come into picture? How did that evolve over a period of time? Or I am talking about informative or explanatory passages. Now, when I talk about science passage, obviously I have to educate. So probably I'm talking about something related to, let's say, do cell phones pose really a health hazard? That would be the title of your passage. And then very, very interesting to read also. Then I may have a passage that talks about a concept of, let's say, extinction. Let's say the disappearing panda. And then you have certain set of questions. So as you go along with the flow, when you are enjoying reading the passages, you would also enjoy answering the questions also, because it becomes a habit that it's kind of breaking the flow, because either there is an error in the construction, so you would want to go and fix that construction, or there is some problem in the punctuation that we want you to revise. Or suppose rhetoric style question, I'm asking you for a replacement of a particular word because I'm not happy with that word, because that is not exactly what I wanted to communicate in that sentence, right? Next, from the perspective of taking this paper, what I need to know. Now, these questions that I told you, broader category, that would be 44 questions. How are they divided? There are 3 subcategories. The first category, because we test you on standard English conventions, it is imperative for me to test you for your grammar usage, right? And unlike, right, common misconception where students come and tell us that grammar is such a vast thing, that means you want me to revise all my high school grammar. No, there are certain defined topics from where your questions are expected. We have created this list. We have created entire teaching lessons around the kind of questions that you would get on your paper. So the only topics that you would be tested on your SAT would be subject verb agreement and tenses. That is one area under grammar that is frequently tested. Next commonly tested area would be modifiers. Now, when I say modifiers, it should ring a bell that what exactly I mean when I say modifiers. Modifiers would mean either my usage of adjectives correctly or my usage of adverbs correctly. Or most importantly here, we'll be talking about certain concepts like dangling modifiers and misplaced modifiers. These are not that difficult to understand as they may sound. They may sound too technical, but then once you get the hang of it, you would realize that once you have understood that concept, you will actually enjoy answering questions based on that. Next very important concept that would be tested on your paper is parallelism. Now, having said that it is important, it is easy also, right? So parallelism means consistency. The idea is when we'll teach you, we'll make things so easy and comprehensible for you that whenever you hear a word parallelism, consistency, how would you identify consistency? So for example, if I'm writing a list, the list has to be consistent. So if I say I like swimming, dancing, and to cook, it should ring a bell that it is off. The construction, the third item, because it is conveying my liking, should also be similar in the construction. Because I use an ing form for the first item in the list, because I used ing form for the second item in the list, the third item, why it is not matching the first 2 items. That is what is consistency, right? Then I talk about faulty comparisons. Here is where I see students getting stuck the most, right? You may have questions that test you on your usage as like, I have as many friends as she, then it has to be does, right? So when I say as many, that means it is followed by as. When I say I have fewer friends, then I am using a comparative degree. It has to be followed by than and not then, which is like a common trap in your paper, right? If I say students of my batch score better than the other batch, half of you would say that this sentence is correct, but then this is grammatically incorrect because this is not even a fair comparison. Why? Because when you are saying students of my batch, you cannot compare them to the other batch. You would have to compare them to the students of the other batch only. So the correct way of writing the sentence would be students of my batch scored better than the students, or if I want to avoid that repetition, I would replace students with those, right? Then there are certain questions that would test you on sentence structure. Now, this is not also taught very well at school. So I may have a sentence that is, let's say, assertive in nature. I may have a sentence that is interrogative in nature. How is that supposed to be worded? And then how is that supposed to be punctuated? Now, this is the nuance that we want you to understand. Another, of late we have seen now in December SAT, there were 4 questions on pronoun-noun agreement. Now, this is a topic where students struggle. Why? Because they're not able to identify what is a pronoun-noun agreement. Now, to tell you in simple terms, when I say a noun, that means the subject of the sentence. And then if I am replacing the noun with a pronoun, that means he, she, it, they, there has to be some agreement. And that agreement would be in number also. Now, when I say, let's say, a sentence like, let's say, Ram is the most bright student. Ram is the brightest student of his batch, let's say. Then for Ram, if I'm using a pronoun, I would only have to stick to a masculine gender. I would have to stick to the number. I cannot use they. And then I cannot use him also, because that's a subject of the sentence, right? This is easier said than done. When I explain this, it is sounding easy, but then when you see those complicated sentences, yes, it would take you time to figure out, but then that would require consistent practice. So this is about the kind of questions that you would see, right, in grammar. Then we have another important category, which is punctuations. Again, we have very defined concepts that are tested under punctuations. First thing that I need to know is what are semicolons. So the only golden rule that will help and go a long way is semicolons means always between 2 independent clauses. Now, what's an independent clause? An independent clause means a sentence, right, that can stand alone, that makes sense, complete sense in itself. When I talk about periods, I'm talking about a closure of an idea. That means between 2 independent clauses, there are only 2 possible punctuations. It can either be a semicolon, or I punctuate it with a period and then start a next sentence. Then there would be a lot of questions on comma uses and misuses there, right? Now, these are 2 unfamiliar punctuations for you because this is actually not taught really well at school, right? When I say colons, colons are for list, right? Let me write an example and then let us see how many of you get this question correct. Now, if I want to say, I want to buy, this is how we were taught at school. This is how the list is supposed to be written. I want to buy, let's say, a pencil, a pen, right? And probably, and an eraser. Is this sentence correct or incorrect? This usage of colon is incorrect. Why? Because yes, this is correct, that colons are used to start a list, but then that is only half of the story. When I am starting a list, I have to first finish my sentence. Only then I can use a colon, or only then I can use a dash. So that means colons and dash comes with certain terms and conditions that they can only be used after independent clauses. So the correct way to write this sentence would be, I want to buy the following items, or I want to buy 3 things, and finish that sentence and then start the list. So this sentence is incorrect. Next concept where students get stuck is, if I'm writing a list and the list has 1 item, right, 2 item, and the 3rd item, this 3rd item will always take a comma before and. Now, why is that so? Because American conventions say that we need an Oxford comma or a serial comma. So that is also mandatory. So I must know what are comma uses. So that becomes important here. Apostrophes, I see students struggling with usage of apostrophe, although this is such an important concept, right? When you say house of Louis, how would you write it? I want to write it in the possessive form. Louis, half of the students, when I ask them, they say Louis would be written like this. This is incorrect usage now. Why are you not writing S? Just because Louis is ending in S doesn't mean that you would not write that S, because you are confused with that usage of rule. You do not have clarity. When I say house of Louis, that means this is a singular subject. A singular subject, irrespective of the fact that it is taking a possessive form, you would always use an apostrophe and an S. What you say, boys hostel, when I say boys, that's a plural case. Now this is fine if I write boys hostel that way. Again, you would find this misspelled, right? So this is boys hostel. So this is the correct way of writing it. Then what are essential and non-essential clauses? You must have seen that when we write sentences, we generally use 2 commas and then we write certain things in between 2 commas. But then I cannot misuse commas, because something that I determine as non-essential, that means even if I take that part of the sentence out, would still make sense, right? So it has to be approached very logically. You have to be thorough with your punctuations. That is what we expect you to be able to apply. So learning rules, knowing rules is one thing. Being able to apply them effectively in your paper, that requires a lot of effort. That requires a lot of practice, right? I'll show you a few questions so that we have an idea that despite the fact that we're discussing this, we see a lot of students making the same mistake over and over again. Now, another important category that I started talking about is, now SAT is very much interested in understanding your expression of ideas, right? So because English is a very thriving language, right? When I say I have written an article, there is always a possibility that I can add a sentence, I can delete a sentence. So when I say I want to test you on this concept of addition and deletion, right? We ask you questions like which of, at this point in time, the writer wants to add a sentence. Do you think the sentence should be added? 2 options would always say yes, this should be added. 2 options would always say no, this should not be added. Now, what students tend to make a mistake here is that they would think as if they are writing this passage and then they would want to pick up an answer that matches their thinking. No, it doesn't work that way, right? You will have to think based on the explanations given. You have to understand that it's an objective test with close-ended options. So only approach that works here is that you would read the explanations and take your final decision. Logical placement questions would be that we ask you, there is a sentence, and then where this sentence should be placed so that it is coherent with the flow of information in the passage. So we are checking you for your ability again to relate sentences, relate ideas, and then place sentences effectively in that passage or paragraph. Data interpretation questions, easy questions, I would say, under rhetoric style, where we give you certain charts, we give you academic charts so that you can deduce information, you relate it to what kind of questions are asked. Then you have questions being asked on transitions. As the name suggests, transitions means a change. Now, when I say transitions, transition can happen within a sentence. It can happen probably between 2 sentences, and I may have an idea transitioning when I move from one paragraph to another paragraph. So this is also would be tested. Concision, redundancy, and style, easy questions. Concision means cut the crap. That means speak to the point. So SAT loves brevity. If you can communicate the same idea in fewer words, it has to be very, very crisp to the point information that you're talking about. When you are saying redundancy, common examples, don't be saying normal. Would you please repeat this again? This is an example of redundancy. Repeat, will not never take again. She did not revert back. Revert back is also an example of redundancy, right? I may possibly help you. May and possibly, they are communicating the same idea. So this is redundant, right? When I talk about style and tone, this is checking you that are you able to determine what is a formal usage and what is an informal usage? Now for SAT, I want something that is very, very formal yet simple, right? So probably there are multiple ways of saying the same thing. But then if I am overcomplicated things, then this is not how it works, right? An easier way, the most preferred way of writing it on my paper, my neighbor seem to have some, let's say, legal issues. That is formal and simple. Suppose I say the same sentence, my neighbors seem to have some litigious concerns. That's like going overboard. Now I'm sounding esoteric. Esoteric means I am getting into jargons. That means a normal person would not understand. That means I'm alienating myself. Or if I say, start sounding too conversational, that is what Americans are known for, right? So when you say something like, let's say my neighbor, hey, did you get to know our neighbors are having some law troubles? No, that's too casual, too conversational. That kind of answer options would never be correct answer. And then mind you, you do get answer options like this on your paper when you are given suggestions to edit or revise the text. So you have to maintain language that is formal yet accessible. Combining sentences, we ask your innovative ways. So suppose I want to make the sentence shorter, using your punctuations, using your grammar concepts correctly, and keeping your concision on point, what is the best way to combine these two options? When I say diction, precision, and idioms, I am checking you for your vocabulary in context. How strong is your hold on the vocabulary that you can pick up the correct word for communicating the intended idea, right? That is what is being tested. Supporting detailed questions would ask you, the author has used so-and-so example to substantiate a claim. Choose another example among the given options that is similar to the example. Now, how would I address that question? Probably I will have to understand that first example. What is that example proving in my passage? And then I give another example like that, right? So that is a lot of analysis of information that I am doing. So all these questions, if you see, they demand a lot of analysis of the information. That means a lot of deep thinking or active reading. Introduction, conclusion, main topic, replacement. These are another category of questions where we ask you to give a suitable introduction. We ask you to give a suitable conclusion. What should be the main topic? What should be a suitable replacement for the underlying portion of the sentence, right? These all kind of questions would be tested. Let me walk you through few examples so that you have better clarity. Now, suppose I have a question like this on my paper. Looking at the options, how do we train student is, the first thing is that you should be able to identify the question correctly looking at the 4 options. Next, where you cannot go wrong, we want you to follow process of elimination and then decide your answer. So if I am reading this, I understand that this question is checking me on my usage of grammar. And under grammar, the subcategory, if you see, it is saying compiling. This is a list, right? This is a list going on. As a result, librarians must now be proficient curators of electronic information. What should they be doing? Compiling, dash, and updating. Consistency. We talked about it a while ago. So when I say this is ing, this is the first item in the list, this is the third item in the list, that means the second item should also match the same category. So it has to be this answer, no? How can I even go wrong about choosing the correct answer here if I know my concepts well? Next, look at this question. Looking at the options, this underlined portion is did. Look at the 4 options. This is asking me do, have, will. What am I changing here? Tenses. Straight away, this is a question on tenses. Identify the time frame, you will get the answer, right? Let's look at another example. What kind of questions would be tested? And these are all SAT questions, right? This is what exactly I call a pronoun agreement question, noun and pronoun that we were talking about. Look at this sentence. I am not even reading the whole thing. I'm just going to that sentence. Scientists have long known that soot particles facilitate melting by darkening snow and ice, limiting dash ability, right? So whose ability? What is this pronoun referring to? This pronoun was referring to soot particles. That was the subject of the sentence. The moment I know this, I know that it has to be a plural option here. Now, most of the students get confused with these common confusables also. Now, mind you, THERE refers to a location, whereas if you're talking about a pronoun, you're referring to this as a possessive case. So here the answer would be D, right? Next, let's look at this question. This is exactly what I was talking about. Vocabulary, diction, precision. Precision means I have homophones. I know site can be spelled in all these 3 terms. When I say site, this is a construction site that I'm talking about. This is the site that I'm talking about as a visual. This is the site that to cite an example, let's say, right? And then you are seeing usage of different prepositions also with this. Cite in search of, cite in search for. What should be the correct usage here? This is what is being tested. Logical comparison question. I am making comparison between 2 items. I need to be point on. What is the subject? What is being compared to? So that I follow process of elimination and get my answer correct. Right? These are few varieties of questions that you would see. Helen ma'am, do we have more time? Or then we have next speaker waiting? I can see that there are 2 questions, right?
Yes, we have 2 to 3 questions.
Can I continue? Yeah.
Yes, you can continue, ma'am. You can.
The session, or should I start with answering the questions?
You can continue with the session, ma'am, and we'll take it towards the end.
Right. So you can let me know when to stop, right?
Yes, I will.
Yeah. All right. So next is, this is exactly what we were talking about under punctuations I would be tested on. Let's see. I have a question here. I'll give you a while to answer this. Right? This is a list. And then we've done this. It says while they use different equipment. Now, why is this comma here? Right? This comma is for a different purpose. When I say while they use different equipment, while I need to understand is making this part of the sentence dependent. So if you split this sentence apart, you realize that the first part of the sentence is actually a dependent thing. Technical term, we call it a dependent clause. The second half is giving me the list. Lawn games like what? Horses, this is the first item on my list. Ladder ball, the second item on my list. What did I tell you a while ago? And it has more than 3 items. I need that Oxford comma or the serial comma that I talked about. So I am looking for an option that has a comma before an and that's my correct answer. Right? So there is a logical way of approaching every question. Not now here, if you do not know the rules, all options may seem to be very, very baffling. Next question, let's see. Again, semicolon. interesting punctuations to understand. Here, if you see, it says, when he returned from so-and-so islands in 1835, same concept, right? Because the previous sentence was starting with while, this is starting with when, this is also dependent thing, right? Then I have a comma. This is from where the main sentence is starting. So this is actually adding information to this main sentence. So I'm saying Charles Darwin brought back a young tortoise named Harriet. Now I realize there is a new subject. The first sentence was about something else. The next sentence is about something else. It should get me to thinking. That means from here, the new sentence is starting, and then the examiner is trying to teach me, right? So she would live for over 170 years before passing away at the Australian Zoo in the 2006. That means this is a new sentence, right? If I take this sentence apart, it can stand alone. If I take this part of the sentence, it can stand alone. That means this is an independent clause. We will teach you that this comma is a technical name. This is a sin in grammar. We call it comma splice, right? So you can never have a comma between two independent clauses. So this is an independent clause. This is an independent clause. If you use a comma, this is wrong. This has to be replaced with a semicolon, right? So that becomes my correct answer, right? Let's see where we head further. Essential and non-essential, important concept. As the name suggests, what is essential? Essential means important. Non-essential means something that is not important. Non-essential means something that I can get rid of, and then still the things remain as they were. That means here, what I need to understand, what part of the sentence can be dispensed, can be done away with, right? So it says the sandhill crane. What is this? A large bird native to North America. This is defining sandhill only, no? Right? So when I say this, the sandhill crane has the longest fossil history of any extant bird at 10 million years. That means this part of the sentence, even if I remove, would not make any difference to me. That means this part of the sentence is non-essential. Now, whatever is non-essential comes into commas and I get my answer, right? That is how we approach punctuation questions. That is how we approach grammar questions. And then obviously we have a lot of important concepts that we can talk about. Rhetoric questions also, like we talk about expression of ideas. Now here, if you see in this sentence, this is actually a diction question that is demanding for your precision of vocabulary in context, right? So we will approach these questions. Again, you can swear by process of elimination. It will always get you the correct answer. But then for that, you must have strong hold on your vocabulary. And for that, reading will certainly help you. Concision, redundancy, and style. Concision means fewer words, right? So here, when I say concision, I have to stick to the point. So when I say here, to be circulated by them, why waste so many words? For their circulating, but then why ing form? That should get you thinking. For their circulating doesn't make sense here. For circulation, so I have not even checked the sentence. I can still get my answer correct, right? Transition, very interesting set of questions here. Here, I need to establish relationship between two sentences, right? Something was going on here. Then they say the new sentence begin, and then it says between 1992 and 1996, more than 400 independently philosophy departments were eliminated from institutions, right? Now this word is changing the whole game. So I need to read this previous sentence. I need to determine what was going on here. And from me to move from this sentence to this sentence, what is that word that can bridge that gap? Now, when I say thus would make it a cause and effect relationship. When I say moreover, that means I would be moving forward in the same direction. But then if I want to bring in a picture of contrast, I would use words like however, right? So that is how I would decide my answer. Here, because you've not given me text above it, it would be irrational if I approach this question this way. Right? Did it make sense? Have we understood? we're supposed to be talking to students, right? So this monologue is getting kind of very weird. Helen ma'am, let's take questions, right? I'm more than willing. What do students want to know?
Yes, yes, we can take the
Yes,
questions then.
right.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for a very informative session. Got to know a lot, and especially about using colons, punctuation marks, period, commas. Even I got to learn a lot from this session. Thanks a
So
lot, ma'am.
this sounds too technical, but then it's very methodical, right? Yeah.
Yes, it's very
So
interesting.
okay. So